Hey team, so I just want to take a few moments to talk about how we can show students and be an example of what it really looks like to follow Jesus. I think the first thing we need to understand as volunteers is that this isn't about making lessons the most flashiest, most out there things you've ever heard to connect. It's about living out faith in a way that students in real life can see and they can understand. I want to break down what our mission is, what discipleship is, and discipleship, isn't just about teaching stories or hearing the worship songs happening and just taking it in. How does this apply to me? This is about guiding students to see, what it means to live out the mission of Jesus every day and to be a follower of Jesus every day. And that starts with us as volunteers and how we act and how we respond to challenges, how we interact with the students. And here's how to do that. I've broken it down into 5 steps, right? The first step being model real faith. As volunteers, students notice what you do more than what you say most of the time. So be honest. Of course, with supervision from the youth pastors, but be honest about your struggles and how you showed patience when things were getting hard, how you pointed it back to Jesus, where in Scripture it says this about Jesus, and tell them and show them how you acted throughout this whole entire process, and demonstrate the kindness that you keep telling them about. I've been a volunteer in my life for a youth group, and they really truly watch everything you do, maybe a little bit more than how they listen to you, and so be very mindful of that. Let them see God and how He worked in your life. Second step being show them love through action, right? As we know, following Jesus isn't just about words, it's how we treat people too. So you listen to these students, you actively listen, you encourage them when they're struggling, and you be consistent whenever you're showing them your care and how Jesus has, done a work in your life. Small acts of love, I think, leave a lasting impression. I could remember 3 volunteers off the top of my head who, kind of demonstrated that, showing that love to me, and how I remember that. Third step being have meaningful conversations, right? You ask questions that help guide towards Jesus, help students think about Jesus, following Jesus in real time. Maybe you could ask them, how have you seen God at work this week? Once you ask them a question like this, it gets the brain stirring, right? How did I see God working this week? And these students can start to point to little things in their life, and once they start pointing to these little things in life, they see the bigger picture, and it helps put things in perspective. You have to have these meaningful conversations. Another one could be, what's a hard choice you had to make, and how did that faith in Jesus that you talk about play into it, right? So you got to guide them to these questions, and how it all points back to Jesus. Fourth point being connect lessons to real life, real time. When you teach a lesson or lead an activity or whatever you may be doing in class that week, you make sure that it shows real life, practical ways to follow Jesus. You can help students see how what we're talking about actually do apply to school. They do apply to their friends, they do apply to their family in real life and their personal choices. With the 5th point being consistency matters more than being perfect. You don't need to have all the answers. I know I was a 19-year-old volunteer for youth. I definitely didn't have all the answers to these questions, but you have to show up for them. You have to live out the authentic life of being a Christian and being a follower of Jesus, and you got to be intentional in everything that you do, and that's when students see how you to be a follower of Jesus. I want to end with this for y'all volunteers. It's this verse, 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 2. It says, teach others who can teach more people. Every small example you set, I want you to remember, every choice you make, students can see that, and it can multiply in their lives. And I know that's verse is applied to me because of what I'm doing with my life. And so I want you to remember that Jesus will keep the cycle continuing if you're involved and you're praying with Jesus. You have to be involved with Jesus. So thank y'all, and see you next time.